Carlos Santana started out playing guitar on the streets of Mexico as a young boy, and he ended up a 10-time Grammy winner, elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There were many, many ups and downs getting there, and I mean some really high ups and some really low downs. But through it all, Santana still stands tall and should be considered as one of the all-time great guitarists ever. Carlos Santana was born on July 20th, 1947, in Autlan, Navarro, Mexico. His father, Jose, was an accomplished violinist, and as a child, Carlos learned to play the instrument from his father. But he didn't really enjoy the tones he created. He would eventually take up the electric guitar, for which he developed a passion for playing. Growing up, he was no stranger to poverty. In 1955, the family moved to Tijuana, Mexico. As a teenager, Santana began performing in the Tijuana strip clubs, inspired by the American rock and roll and blues music of artists like B.B. King, Johnny Lee Hooker, and Muddy Waters. He would work from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 6 in the morning. He would play for an hour and then take an hour break while the strippers did their thing. Carlos said it was great. He would much rather do that than go to school. In 1965, he moved up with his family, this time to San Francisco, and became a naturalized American citizen. In October 1966, Carlos started the Santana Blues Band, later to be known simply as Santana. Santana was a band of young and really talented musicians in the San Francisco Bay Area that were very well known on the West Coast, but had not released their first album yet. It was completed and in the can, ready to be released when they appeared on the stage at Woodstock. Carlos said, "We flew to the stage in this helicopter. I saw this living organism like an ocean of people, hair and colors, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know? When I get there, Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead turned me on to some medicine." Now, I've heard Carlos describe it as peyote, mescaline, mushrooms, or even LSD. Either way, we can pretty much take it to the bank he was tripping. He said, "We were supposed to have 7 or 8 hours before we were to go on. I figured I had plenty of time," he laughed. But the last thing that Woodstock would be known for is a smooth schedule, and soon, while peaking on his trip, Carlos and the group were told that they were to go on right now. So with the guitar neck of an electric snake, as Carlos described it, him and the rest of the band went on stage. Their performance that day was considered by many as one of the best of the 3-day festival. When the film of the concert was released the following year, Jimi Hendrix, who would close the 3 days of concerts, said that Santana was his favorite performance of the event. Carlos says that this was the breakout performance for the group. They played 8 songs and were paid $750 for it. After Woodstock, the self-titled debut LP, Santana, came out, introducing Santana's first top 10 hit, Evil Ways. The album stayed on Billboard's album charts for 2 years and was soon followed by 2 more classics and Billboard #1 albums, Abraxas and Santana 3. In 1973, he married his sweetheart, Deborah, and they had 3 children together. With his family and his success in the music industry, it seemed that his life was coming together. And it really was on the outside. He had some inner turmoil going on that we'll get into a bit later in the video, but for now, we'll stick to the guitar and records. All through the 70s, his record sales were very good, even on into and through the 80s. Considering most groups have about a 10-year run at best before fading into a classic rock show, back out playing their old hits that made them famous, Santana had a 20-year run. Sure, he had a few albums you could call flops, but for the most part, his albums sold and the people still enjoyed his music. He seemed to get even better with age, but with that word age comes record executives who feels and acts just won't relate to the up-and-coming new fans looking for their style of music. So as the 90s rolled in, Carlos was in his mid-40s. He released a couple of albums. There was Spirits Dancing in the Flesh, Milagro in 1992, the live album Sacred Fire in 93, and a collaboration with his brother Jorge and nephew Carlos Hernandez titled Santana Brothers in 1994. But none were successes. Santana wanted to make more music, but he wanted to be sure it would be supported. He also had to deal with tragedy during that time. His father, Jose, had died. Carlos admitted that after his father's death, he felt mostly numb and could barely even listen to music. It sure seemed that Santana's career was bottoming out. Carlos said he wasn't a very nice person at this time in his life. He had also been carrying around some deep-seated baggage most of his life and was starting to come to terms with being molested as a child by a friend of the family, an abuse that would go on for almost 2 years. So through the 90s, life was not easy on him. His career peaked in the 70s, and now he was 52 years old. Seems like it was time to call it and just play some gigs. But after being elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Santana felt he had more to give, and the only way he could do that was by creating music. But how could he do it now? When he decided to try again, he kept getting turned down by all the record labels. 5 in all had turned him down, seeing him as a relic from Woodstock. And then he decided to talk to Clive Davis. He felt if anyone could help, it just might be him. Clive Davis was the man who first signed Carlos for Columbia Records. Davis had left Columbia a few years after that and started his own record label called Arista Records. Clive had already helped make Whitney Houston and many others stars. The question was, would he and could he do the same for an over 50 Carlos Santana? The answer to both was yes. Clive Davis listened to what Santana had to say and was intrigued by what he wanted to do. As Cosmic Carlos Santana put it, "I want to reconnect the molecules with the light." That was, to create an album of collaborations with some of the biggest names of the time while keeping true to his old sound. Davis knew people were skeptical of his signing Santana. Many people thought it was a nostalgia play, sign an older musician to appeal to the older audience and possibly lose money. But Davis truly believed in what Santana wanted to do. So the album Supernatural was recorded and then released in 1999. The album went diamond, selling more than 13 million copies that year. The song Smooth, which featured Matchbox 20's Rob Thomas, was the huge hit song that summer in 1999. The song stayed number 1 on the Billboard charts for 12 weeks, the most extended number 1 song that year. The Supernatural album exploded and put Santana back on top again. To date, it has sold over 15 million here in the United States and 10 million in other countries. In 2000, following the success of Supernatural, Santana was nominated for 9 Grammy Awards and winning 8 of those nominations, tying the record held by Michael Jackson for the most awards at a single Grammy ceremony. Throughout his career, Santana would be nominated for 14 Grammy Awards and would win it 10 times. When it comes to the guitar, Santana is probably one of the most influential around. His Latin rock blues style is looked up to by many young and old alike. When it comes to the young players, here's what he had to say. "The first thing that I would teach the new youngsters about music is like, don't touch the guitar yet. Just look at it. Can you hear the sound just by looking at it? Can you give yourself chills before you touch the guitar? If you can't, be and do something else. Because this is a way of life. You're giving birth to beauty when you play, you know? So give yourself chills. Otherwise, you might as well just be a mechanic dealing with a screwdriver or a hammer. You may also want to try not using so many pedals, because it's like putting on too much makeup. People won't see your real face. This is your face, man. Just plug into the amplifier and be entrusted this is your sound." He went on to say, Ever since I was a child, I was always attracted to melodies. Whether I hear Jeff Beck, a choir, an ocean, or the wind, there's always a melody in there. I don't think you would ever be going out on a limb to say Santana was one of the best melodic guitar players ever. After Supernatural, Santana would release a few more albums, Shaman in 2012 and All That I Am in 2005. The first selling 2.5 million copies here in the U.S., and the latter one only 750,000. And then in 2007, his wife of 34 years, Deborah, would file for divorce. Carlos said the problem started while he was touring during the Supernatural album and was gone all the time. Deborah told me that she thought I was living la vida loca while she was taking care of the children and the business. What was missing was us time, he said. When we divorced, it was very hurtful. It felt like somebody ripped my heart open and shot some dry ice in it. I couldn't believe it was over, because we'd never known divorce in my family. They had 3 children together, and this was a really rough time in his life. Even though being a very spiritual person, he was carrying a huge load inside. He says his faith and trust in God is what helped carry him through it all. So now with his marriage over, and the next few albums he released not doing so well, Carlos was feeling lost. But just like he got a second chance at his career in 1999, in 2010 he got a second chance at love. Cindy Blackman had just become a touring drummer for Santana. Carlos met and heard her play several years earlier at a festival in Europe while she was touring with Lenny Kravitz. Cindy first played with Santana in the spring of 2010 when drummer Dennis Chambers had a previous commitment. They have a great band vibe, she says. It's nice to play with people who have grown together, built a sound together, and stayed together. When that happens, you can create so many different levels of communication. That's what they've done, and I love interacting with it. The electricity she helped create on stage and the band generated some chemistry off stage with Carlos. He ended up proposing to her on stage after one of her drum solos during a July 2010 concert. They married that December. Carlos is now 76 years old. He and Cindy live in Las Vegas and perform there and other venues regularly. He also has a vacation home in Hawaii. His documentary, Carlos, will be shown for a limited time in theaters September 23rd, 24th, and the 27th. You can get all the information on it and anything else you need on his website, which is santana.com. I'll leave a link to it in the description below the video. Looking back, there were many ups and downs in his life, but the person and musician it created is something to behold. For my money, Santana will always be one of the best. Rolling Stone rated him at number 20. I think that might be even a little low, but that's just me thinking out loud. How about y'all? Did he ever influence your playing or the style of music you listen to today? Let me know in the comments section below. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe on your way out. Maybe even take the time to stick around and watch another video or two. Appreciate all your support. Thanks for watching.